Hi, how's it going? Welcome to the Building Blocks of Bass. My name's Bob DeBoo. Really happy to be here. Happy Monday. Hope everybody had a good weekend. Doing good here in St. Louis. It's getting darker outside earlier, but I'm in the shed, ready to practice, ready to get some practice on my modal walking today. So that's the focus of today's guided practice session. We're going to talk about how to walk over one chord for extended periods of time, like tunes like So What, like Impressions, even like sections of tunes that are like on one chord for quite a while, like Bolivia, or any tunes where you're sticking for like 4 bars, 8 bars, 16, even like longer than that, staying on one chord. How to stay creative inside of just like one harmony or one chord quality for a while. So that's the focus today. We're going to take some examples from the great Paul Chambers and from Ron Carter and try to go directly to the source and to get some information to practice. So today is all about practicing playing modally, and we're really going to shed D minor, like D minor 7, especially like the So What. We've got some examples directly from Paul Chambers, like I said. And please leave any questions, comments next door over here or wherever, and I will check them out as we go through our guided practice session today. And absolutely, I'll try to hit as many as I can at the end of the session. So please don't be shy. Feel free to chime in. Any questions, any comments, whatever. So I need to reference really quickly too all of the visual things that I'm going to be using today, all of the practice material, all the transcriptions basically that I've prepared for today that I'm going to put on the screen. You can find them by clicking down below. You can download the PDF. Just follow the link that's down below there. And also, I'm very excited too, I mentioned this last week, but my new course for openstudiojazz.com entitled The Building Blocks of Bass, kind of influenced by this guided practice session I've been doing for a while, is now available. So you can find a link to that down below as well. It's really been a joy to release that and get good feedback from it, and I'm really happy that it's out and hopefully helping everybody to get a better handle on some bass playing, or at least hear my opinions about it, So what's the idea with playing modally, right? And this isn't like necessarily always just like modal. There are definitely tunes where you're sticking on one chord for longer than a bar, longer than 2 bars, longer than 4 bars. So what do you do? Like, how do you get the information across without just like simply playing the scale or finding some new ways to walk over those chord changes without being super repetitive, right? So let's just go straight to the source. We're gonna like mainly stick on D minor 7 today. Again, like the So What, Impressions type of vibe. And I'm using a Ron Carter example that's not either of those, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So just first things first, let's kind of warm up, just get going. This is D minor 7. The first thing that I think about, and this isn't always the case, there's multiple minor chords out there, right? There's no mystery to that, I think. But this is the D Dorian scale. So if we're thinking a 2 chord, Dorian is the second mode in the major modes, right? Ionian, Dorian. So that's the 2 chord. That's typically what happens. Of course, if you're in a minor key, that's when you bounce to either harmonic minor, melodic minor, some of the other choices. But a lot of times on a 2 chord, or in say like a song like So What, where it's modal like this, it stays inside this Dorian mode for a while. So let's just check out this mode. It's basically like we're playing in C major, right? Except we're starting on the 2nd degree of the C major scale. Almost couldn't get it out there. 2nd degree of the C major scale, which is D, right? So let's check it out. We've got D, E, F, G, A, B natural, C natural, and D. And right, these are the white keys on the piano, right? No sharps, no flats. Right? And this is the typical, this is the chord that we come across when we play So What, when we play Impressions. Now, if I throw out my metronome here, I'm just going to try walking over that for a little while. Okay? So I've got my metronome on. It's at 40 clicks per the minute, and I'm going to call it beat 4 for right now. Okay? So a little up there, but I'm just thinking about one scale, so I'm going to try to shed this for a minute. So I'm going to play the scale a few times and then consider walking over it. And if you've got your bass out, do this with me. But let's try to just stay inside of that scale and think about what we can do with it. Now, some of the key tenets of good walking bass lines are hitting chord tones on strong beats. Not always, and there's definitely some examples that we're going to hit in a minute where that doesn't happen. But a good goal when you're practicing this, or if you're just getting started, like really trying to develop your bass lines, is to hit chord tones like roots, fifths, thirds on strong beats. What do I mean by strong beats? Strong beats are like beat 1 and beat 3, okay? Now this is not a rule, like this is just a suggestion, right? It tends to work, and we'll study some bass lines here that explicitly state that, okay? So let's play that D Dorian scale. Let's just stick with the scale maybe 3 times through and then start moving it around. Try to make it like a walking line a little bit more, okay? So I'm calling this beat 4. And if you're new to the guided practice sessions here, if you've not checked out like how I do this, I call this 4, 4, 4, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is D Dorian. And you hear how rhythmically already I had to play that D a couple times there and then pause there. There's only 7 unique notes in this scale, and in most, European classical scales like C major, right? 7 notes. But let's keep shedding on this just for a minute. I'm going to try to bounce around the scale a little bit more. Try it with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Third. Almost wanted to throw in our chromatic note already because it's so ubiquitous in this sound. But just notice that this kind of like rhythmically doesn't really fit super well. There's exceptions, and there's definitely different ways to practice staying inside of just this sound. 2, 3, 4. See, already I'm hitting like not chord tones. Intervals. You can do skips, you can make this work. But it's got less of that that like curve to it when you do that. It's more linear, it's more jagged when you start introducing bigger intervals, right? So here is a couple suggestions to practice. And this one is what comes up a whole lot, especially in the Paul Chambers example that we're going to check out in a second here. And again, if you're wanting any of these transcriptions here down below, just click the link down below. You can get them for free. So it's just easier to see as opposed to having it on the scale, or on the screen, I mean. So let's check this out. This is the Dorian scale, the Dorian mode, the same mode we were just playing, except now we're going to add in a chromatic note. Okay? So where typically does that happen? Now, if you're familiar with like the bebop scales, things like that, a lot of times on the minor, you'll hear it like this. Almost like you're playing a G7 bebop scale. I don't think that happens very often when we're walking, okay? So what I hear the most, or one of the options that I hear the most of, is doing this, adding a major 7th or a leading tone into the root. Okay, so let's just look even rhythmically already. This is D, the root of D minor, right? So that's a good note to start with on beat 1. What happens here? It's the 5 chord, right? Beautiful. So if we're staying inside of one harmony for a while, implying root, implying 5, is really a common way to do it. It's like almost like we're implying a 5 chord in this measure, even just by using this scale. Same here. When we go back down the scale, when we descend the scale, it's like we're implying a 5 chord, which is going to fit. It's always going to, and it depends on where we put it too. But let's just play this scale a little bit, okay? So this is adding in the major 7th, or a half step below the root. Maybe you don't want to call it a major 7th. But listen to the motion of it. That's the idea, right? So try it with me. We'll do like 1, 2, 3, 4. A, B, now chromatic. Same way down. Good. Let's try it again. So rhythmically, this lines up so much better. And a cool thing about this too is if we change directions, if we don't do any skips, and if we just use the scale like step by step, it's always going to land in a strong rhythmic fashion. And here's what I mean. So like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's just the scale. Now if I start playing with the, this is beat 1. This is beat 1. That's the third. Beat 1. So all that lines up, you know, in a really strong rhythmic sense, which is key. This is what we want. So even if I'm like changing direction, but not using interval steps, interval skips, if I'm using the scale and thinking of my lines like moving up and down instead of big jumps, it can really help smooth out the bass lines, right? So this is a big one. Dorian with chromatic to and from the root. Let's play this through a few times and we'll bounce it into some different keys just to make sure we got the concept, okay? So today I'm rolling with this on 40. And again, we're gonna call this beat 4. So let's find our beat. And make sure you've got a really strong sense of the rhythm you're practicing against before you get into this. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Ready? 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. How about one more time through the scale? Sweet. Does that make sense? Right? It's ubiquitous in walking bass lines for sure, especially on minor chords. Now, of course, it doesn't need to just be inside of that 1 octave range. We can go down lower, and of course we can go higher. But going down lower, you know, unless you've got that extension or your drop D tuning, you're going to need to, you know, find your other way up to the next D or using an A. But we can go down lower, the next octave lower. Right? So that's a really common tactic to play over a minor 7th chord. Let's move that. Let's immediately move that into a different key. How about I don't know. How about F minor? Let's do F minor. So again, this is a half step. It's the Dorian mode, but it's got a major 7th included in it. You could call it a major 7th. It's honestly the 3rd of the 5 chord. Just a whole. I don't know if y'all want to get into that or not. Like if we're in D minor 7, if I'm playing a C sharp, it's implying a 5 chord in D minor. Right? Like this kind of motion. We talked a little bit about that in the diminished stuff last week, but let's do what I was just saying. We said F minor, right? So let's play it. Let's play the scale, and then we'll play it in time, okay? So this is F, E, E flat, D, C, B flat, A flat, G, F. And let's turn this into 2 and 4, and we'll just work at a medium tempo with this kind of concept, okay? So let's play the scale. Like 1, 2, 1, 2, F minor, go. Now here is that half step. Let's go 2 octaves. So everything's lining up. Let's go back down, right? And when you're practicing these scales too, think about them as if you're doing bass lines, you know, like try to stay in time, of course. Try to be in time, but try to think about your tone, your attack, the length of your notes, playing legato, intonation, of course. Of course, when I say intonation, I'm going to play out of tune. But turn this practice into reality. You know what I mean? Like practice like you're going to perform. All right, so if we're going to play that kind of sound, let's try using that. All right, so let's do a walking bass line using just that scale, but try to move without using any interval jumps. Let's just play the scale, and you can pivot. Like right, if I'm going up to like A flat and I hit a B flat, I could go to C, or I could go back down, right? Right? So that's a really common way to deal with this. So let's go at this speed to 1, 2, just try it with me. 2, 3, go. choosing sometimes to pivot. But you'll notice every time I'm hitting beat 1, I'm hitting either the root, the 7th, the 5th, the 3rd, and it sounds very F minor-ish, right? But it takes away that extra beat that was missing there. From the normal Dorian scale, it only had 7 notes. Does that make sense? Cool. Awesome. So I wanted to talk about a couple other options for using some chromaticism in the walking lines too. And we're all of this is geared still towards D Dorian, right? So that was using the half step leading into the root. Another common tactic is what we see here. So this is Dorian with the chromatic between the 5th and the 6th. And again, the emphasis really is like, if we look at this scale, just the way that it's written out, this is D, E, F, G, A. A is on beat 1, and that's super crucial, right? We want to think about these strong beats. A, B flat, B natural. That B natural is like integral to like the Dorian sound, right? That natural 6th. And the C natural in the same way down. So D, C, B, B flat, A, G, F, E. So it's the same as the Dorian mode, except now, almost like how we do stuff with the major bebop scale, we're putting in between the half step between the 5th and the 6th, like we would do in the major bebop scale. Same with the Dorian mode. Maybe that's a way to think of it, okay? And if you're just joining us, you can download all this information at the link down below. Please leave comments, questions. I'm gonna definitely hit those after we've done some more practicing. So don't be shy. And stick around because I'm definitely gonna answer them, okay? Let's try this scale out, okay? I'm gonna put the metronome on. I've got it set at 40. Let's do it in this key and just let's do the learning tempo, okay? So we're gonna call this 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, play it with me. Go. D, E, F, G, A, B flat, B, C, D. Here I'm putting those little skips in there too. They're not different note choices, they're just rhythmic. Da, da, ba, 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 da, 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 da. It's still the same scale, right? But the motion of the line is still the same, right? And you can change directions. And everything's gonna still line up. There's better options and lesser options, right? Maybe. I don't know. We don't need to. Yeah, we should judge them. We should be critical of our bass lines, right? So here's beat 1. Right, so that's another common tactic. Using that half step, the first one that we just talked about was between the 7th and the root. The minor 7th, major 7th, root. This one is geared towards, again, the 5th and a chromatic step in between the 5th and the 6th. Of course, you can mix and match these too. However the line is making sense, you just want to get these under your finger. So let's bounce this into another key now. Let's do, oh, I don't know. What do y'all want to do? Great, B flat. Let's do B flat minor. Perfect. You ready? So let's just do the Dorian mode first. Just make sure we've got that under our fingers. I'm going to take this away. Maybe you can click the link down below and get all of this worksheet that I put together for today. You can just download it there. So let's play B flat Dorian. It's like we're playing an A flat, right? But we're going to start on B flat. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, go. So you see how that already, now I'm done with that scale and I've still got beats left, right? 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Getting here is cool. 2, 3, 4. But now I'm off. So I need to introduce that extra chromatic scale, right? Everybody good on the B flat Dorian? Now let's add the chromatic note between the 5th and the 6th. So we're going to play, when we get to F, we'll do F, F sharp, G, and then keep going up. 1, 2, 3, go. Here's our half step. If we go down lower, it's down there too, right? Don't neglect the other octaves or the other areas of the range. Try to talk while I'm playing. It's always a good idea to try to talk when I'm playing. But everything lines up, and that's the real key point. Every time I'm hitting beat 1, I'm hitting either the root, the 3rd, the 5th, or the minor 7th, right? So I can play with that a little bit more. While we're in B flat, let's do that first idea that we used. So this is the Dorian mode, but with the major 7th shoved in there, all right? And so this is the Dorian mode with the chromatic leading to the root is another way I like to put it. Let's do it in B flat. Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, go. Here comes G, A flat, A, B flat, A flat, G. Let's do that a couple more times, or maybe one more time. Right, so that's the idea. Let's take this automatically now and up our tempo. So if you've got that under your fingers, let's immediately start practicing a little bit faster. Okay, so let's call this now beat 4 again. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, scale. This is the major, adding in that major 7th. That kind of color. So I mixed my scales up and put them both together, and then I ended up out of rhythm, right? So if you add them in both, you got to be careful. But let's look at that. That segues really nicely into my next thing that I want to present. And we're going to check out some Paul Chambers lines and some Ron Carter lines and see that these are both evident in both of those lines and try to notice how they're being used. But I wanted to get a good BASE line, bass line, put together before we investigate those, okay? So here is the D Dorian mode with some chromatic notes inserted in them to have them rhythmically line up with walking lines. So you can use this scale, you can use those other two scales that we just did as well, but this is utilizing both of them, okay? So, and it has a really strong chromatic directionality. Can I do this? No, I'm going backwards. So if you notice here, we have D, E, F, G, and that's been a constant, D, F, G, A. That's been a constant throughout all the scales so far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what usually happens is a chromaticism in here, leading up and around between the 5th and the root. So let's notice what we have here. This is the 5th, the Dorian, like the natural 6, like B natural, and then the chromatic movement, well, it's from this B natural, leading all the way up to D, right? So that gives a really strong motion from like this implied A chord or the 5 chord, 5 of D minor, from here, and it's heading this direction, right? Now, we notice from the root, we're going down the other way, like with the half step between the 6th and the 5th, right there, right? So that gives us a strong pull this direction. So I'm trying to think backwards for all this. From the root, heading back down to the 5th. So let's just play this really quick, okay? So this is going up, we're doing like that major 7th leading into the root. Coming down, we're playing the chromatic motion into the A, into the 5th, okay? So just play this, get this under your fingers for me. It's D, E, F, G, A, B natural, C, C sharp, D, C natural. Now, where is this leading? You can hear that immediately, right? It's trying to push back to the A, like the implied 5 chord. Let's try it again. Now we could go up and down in that same manner, but this is a different style. Chromatic is really pulling back towards this A. So we might make that choice if our lines were still wanting to go down. We might not make that C sharp choice. I might make D, C, B, B flat, A, and then going back up. B natural, C, C sharp, D. Let's try that in a minute, okay? So try this with me, okay? We're gonna play it's the D Dorian mode, but we're inserting those chromatic notes. If we're heading up, use the chromatic motion leading towards the next root. If we're heading down, use the chromatic motion leading towards the 5th, or the implied like 5 chord, or A, it's another way. So let's start up here, and we'll just take it a note at a time and talk about like the choices. So here's D, right? So this is D on my G string. Now I'm gonna go down the scale. So what's my first choice? So I'm gonna do D, C sharp, C, or D, C natural, B, B flat, A. It's got way more weight heading towards that A. Let's keep going down, right? Now if I'm heading up from there, from this A, I wanna ascend and go up to D. So what notes should I choose? B natural, C, C sharp, D. Keep going. E, F, G, A. Here's my choice. Do I want to play a B flat or a B natural? You could do either, but the concept that we're trying to practice is that momentum leading towards the downbeat of the next measure. So let's play this scale a few times through, and we'll call this 2 and 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, go. Now I'm heading up, so now I'm heading down, so I want this chromatic motion in a different way. Keep going down now. Now up. Good. Let's go back down from the 5th. So all that's the same. You could do this, like that first scale that we learned, and it's all gonna line up, right? Let's go down the other way. It also works, right? It's just a choice. It becomes a taste thing at this point. So that's the main concept. Now let's look at some of the transcription lines, okay? So here, every bass player, if you don't know this already, go check this out, of course. This is Paul Chambers on So What from the Kind of Blue album. And we're, of course, not doing the whole walking line. That would be a really fun guided practice session. Maybe we'll do that at some point, the whole song, once we get the copyright to that. Andrew's working on that right now. But Paul Chambers, let's look at his note choices here, right? Okay, and again, this is directly from the recording. This is what's up. He's playing D, and let's look at where he's using his chromaticism. Let's play this maybe just a little bit out of time. So here's D, C natural, B natural, then the half step leading into the 5th, A, G, F, and on beat 4 here, he's playing a 5 leading into the D, right? So that's a good way to bridge our lines. Always put a 5 in front of that. He does it again here, 5, 1, right? Half step down to the next line down here. So notice these things. It's usually scalar or by the 5th or by a chromatic note. But look at the shape of this line too. He's going down, he's descending, and it's very scalar, and then he jumps back up using that 5th, and he's ascending before he gets to bar 4. And then bar 5 and 6, he's heading back down. By bar 7 and 8, he's back down and like starting his ascent again. So there's not a lot of big jumps in this line, which makes it really cohesive. It sounds very clear and not disjointed, and that's all very, that's intentional for sure. So let's play this line at the learning tempo again, okay? And we want this to feel good no matter what tempo, right? So let's hear this beat before we start. Da, 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 da. Sorry, I'm getting a call. Decline, I'll call you back. Unless you're watching right now. There you go. So 1, 2, play this line with me. 1, 2, Paul Chambers, go. This is, of course, way slower than the original tempo. So here's that half step in a different way that he did it, that we didn't talk about, right? But here's that chromatic leading to the 5th. So some of the things that we notice here is how he's using this whole step in this chromatic motion leading to the 5th, right? And then he's going back up. Here's that root again, but he's using a different set of note choices than what we practiced, but he's getting the same result. Like, where is he heading? So from this D natural, he's heading to A down here, right? I can't do it. Way down there at the bottom of this line, right? That A natural in the 5th bar, that's where he's heading. And he's using that chromaticism intentionally, very intentionally. So we want to take some of that. Now notice this first bar is just like what's happening on the 6th bar, right? So that's something that we can definitely use in our modal walking or playing over one chord for a while, okay? So do we notice anything else, right? There's another repetition. Paul definitely uses a lot of repetition in his lines too. Very specifically, like this right here into this, like bars 2 and 3, and then bars 7 and 8 are exactly the same. 4, boom, 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 boom. It's the exact same, and it's intentional. You know what I mean? If a line works, it's okay to repeat it. Nothing wrong with that, you know. Maybe don't repeat it over and over and over again, but there's nothing wrong with it. All right, so let's check out some more of Paul's line on So What. This is actually the next 8 bars, I believe. So what do we have here? It's that line that he did in the previous 8 bars where he's going down chromatically to the 7th, and instead of using B natural, he's using that B flat again, so that half step leading into the 5th. Let's try this. So the weight is really, he could play a B natural here, still be inside the sound, but the weight of his line, his note choice there, is really pushing forward, and that's what we want in our lines, forward momentum. Play this line with me and let's check it out. So 1, 2, 3, go. So this is that other way, and here's this shape again that he's using. 2, 3. Now here, he's offsetting the rhythm, but he's still going to the 5th here, and that note didn't work at all. Cool? So there's a couple things inside of this line that's directly from what we practice, and there's a few things that are not. He used this shape in the previous 8 bars example, and now here he is using it again. But it all is D minor, right? But it doesn't get old. Here he's implying something different. The line changes, but he gets right back on the horse, and I think he's heading right there. He's heading for the bridge, right? But by playing that C sharp on beat 1, he's displacing his harmonic rhythm by hitting the G. Well, the G is always going to sound okay on a D minor chord. The 4 on a minor chord at the 11th really, like always kind of works. It can be used as a pedal when you're walking, and in solos, it's always just a good note choice. Let's look at this next example. So this is Paul Chambers, and then we're going to roll into Ron, okay? Oh, and I've got a great picture. Sorry, I'm going to put up Paul just for a second. I love this picture of Paul Chambers. Look at this. Man, boss. Look at that bass. And his shades too. Yeah. Okay, I wish I could hear this picture. I wish I could hear him playing that. The great Paul Chambers. So we're checking out his bass line. This is again still from So What. And if you're just joining us too, I need to shout out my course, the Building Blocks of Bass course with Open Studio Jazz is now available. Click the link down below. A lot of great information about the bass. And please check out all of the courses over at Open Studio. Some great bass courses by Christian McBride, Ruben Rogers, legends. I mean, just, I can't recommend them enough. It's really cool. And there's great courses for any instrument too. Maybe not trombone yet, but they're getting there. That's in the works, I'm sure. All right, so let's check out this bass line. Let's just play through at the same tempo and let's figure that out, okay? So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, go. So here's that chromatic motion again. Here's this line that he always likes hitting the 5th before getting back to the root. 1, 2, 3, 5. 1, 2, 3, 2. There's that idiomatic line that he likes to use when he's coming down from that D up there in the upper register. And then he always tends to do, when he's in this range, the lower range, he likes to use that motion where it's the whole step down from D to C, B natural, B flat, to the A. The point is he's still getting, like, look at this line. Every beat 1, he's hitting either the root or the 5th. So it's a good way to imply more chord changes. You don't have to hit the root, of course, but we want to be able to do that rhythmically to where it lines up. You don't want to end up on like an E too often on beat 1 or a C sharp like Paul did in that last 8. Of course you can do it. The line makes sense, or whatever else is happening in the music. Do that. But let's play this line again. 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, so this is, at this point, what I want to do is talk about, we're going to get into some Ron, and please leave some comments, questions. I'm going to check them out in a little bit, but let's do this now. Let's take what we've just shedded on the Paul Chambers line and some of the ideas that we practiced in those scales earlier, those not augmented scales, but scales with the chromaticism in them. They're augmented by an extra note. But let's take the vibe of what Paul was playing, like his note choices there, and try to make our own lines. Okay, so do this with me at home or wherever you're at. I'm going to try to use like explicitly some of the information from Paul's lines that we just went over and use the same kind of concepts, okay? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, go. This half step. Whole step down, he likes to do this. Exactly what he did. 3, 5, 1, bridge, right? You play that E flat minor. So good. So we're trying to, that's the point when we transcribe too, is of course we want to listen deeply and try to really just enjoy the music that we're hearing in the first place and get the vibe of the music that we're hearing in the first place. And also as musicians be analytically minded about it, right? What are the note choices? What's the rhythmic vibe happening? How do I get that in my playing? So when you transcribe something, it's great to play along with the track, of course. It's great to transcribe it, write it out, and see it, analyze it, but then try to utilize it, make it your own too, right? So use the ideas, try to practice in the same spirit. So that last little bit was just an under tempo in the same spirit of Paul Chambers on So What bass line. So let's move on to this man, Maestro, Mr. Ron Carter. I hate that I'm behind this picture. This should be a full screen shot for like 30 minutes, and we should just look at the glory. I can hear this picture too. Oh man, Ron Carter, right? Okay, so let's check out the example that I have here. This is again over D minor. Now it's a different type of tune. This isn't Ron playing So What. This is Ron on a trio album with Tommy Flanagan and Tony Williams. So it's Tommy Flanagan, Tony Williams, and Ron Carter trio. Incredible album. I forget what the name of it is. It's like Trio Plays or something like that. They do St. Thomas. They do Milestones. They do a bunch of great tunes, you know, and they do Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing. And so this is the first 4 bars. Before it goes to the G minor chord, C, F. So this is Ron playing over D minor 7, okay? So let's just out of time take a look at what he's doing here. So he's playing straight up the scale from the root, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now what is his choice here? He's using a half step. He's using that half step between the 5th and the 6th, and instead of using C natural like we did in our earlier scales, he's using C sharp, which is kind of a hybrid of both of the ideas that we were using, a half step between the 5th and the 6th, and then a chromatic note leading into the root of the next chord. But look, he's playing the root, he's playing the 5th, he's playing the root on beat 1. All crucial, you know what I mean? Like to really have good like walking lines. If we look even further on beats 1 and 3, every note he's playing on beat 1 and 3 really jives with the sound of the scale too, even when we've got this like B natural right here, right? Again, down here, there's the 3rd, we got F. So let's play the scale again, or the bass line again. And in the recording, he's going to a G there, okay, into the next chord. He's hitting a G minor. All right, so that's really interesting to note here. All right. So let's check out another. I've got a few more, and then we'll go into the comments and try to talk a little bit more. I want y'all's opinion on modal walking, what works, what doesn't. So this is an example of a really disjointed walking line, and this is like up tempo too. This is like. It's like that tempo. So we're learning it, you know, like we want to investigate it is what I was talking about. But look at this line. He's using the open D string, crucial. That's like, what do you call it? Idiomatic to the bass. We've got these open strings that can resonate while we play other notes, so use them. 5, open string to an open string. This is that, was it the 2nd scale that we did, going from the D to the C natural, chromatically down to the 5th, right? And if we notice here, that F sharp is only there because this is Don't Mean to Think If It Ain't Got That Swing, and he's implying a half step leading to G minor, but he's also kind of implying that that D minor is turning into a D7, maybe like a D7, some kind of alteration leading like a sharp 9 or like maybe a flat 13 kind of sound because it's heading minor. But this F sharp way down there that I have in parentheses is because he's implying another chord coming up. That's the only reason. He's not playing an F sharp in the D minor sound. Okay? Let's try this a few times through. Since we're warmed up too, let's call this beat 4 and work on our uptempo just a little bit on it. Okay? So where's the beat? I'm calling this 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that would, of course, go to G. That's the next sound that he's implying there. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. But let's play around this sound at this tempo a little bit more. Oh, I was off. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. chromatic note leading into the root. You know, as long as you're getting to these goal notes by beat 1, that's really what we want to practice and what we want to explore, right? So that all works. Let's check out. I've got 2 more little 4-bar snips to check out. And this one is interesting because he's using like an enclosure type of idea to the 5th. Let's just take it note by note. He's still like beat 1, he's hitting D, the root. Crucial, right? We want that grounded feeling, especially at the beginning of a phrase. Hit the root. Bar 2, he's hitting the 5th. It's interesting how he gets there. We're going to check that out. Bar 3, beat 1, he's hitting the root again. And what's he doing on bar 4? So, okay, we need no further evidence, right, that you're supposed to be hitting a lot of times roots or 5ths on beat 1 when walking modally, right? Evidence is there. How is he getting to this A? He's doing a really creative Ron Carter way to do it. And this line right here, it's like he's implying this is straight up like A major, like the 5 of D. A, E, C sharp, D. So it's almost like he's hitting D minor 7, A, right? Like what we were talking about. So implying different chord changes, especially root 5th, can really make a big difference, you know. So let's play this line. This sounds familiar, right? And then again, this F sharp is leading to a G because this is don't mean to think if it ain't got that swing. The next chord is a G minor. He's not playing an F sharp in the D minor sound, right? So it's not specifically modal, but it's 4 measures of him playing over this sound. So let's try this in tempo. 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, go. Not as graceful, but I'm trying to get the spirit, right? All right, so let's look at the last one, then I'm gonna hop into the comments. Please feel free to leave a comment, question, suggestion, joke. Jokes are great, you know, at this point in my life. I need to hear some jokes. I'm not gonna tell you any, but let's look at this last one, okay? It's not because they're indecent, they're all kids' jokes because I'm a dad, so nobody here wants to hear dad jokes. Go to a different YouTube channel for that, right? So this is our last one. This is still Ron Carter, of course. And let's look at what he's doing. And this one is very, you know, it starts off with some very chromatic motion. He's going from D down to this 5th again. Evidence, right? Again, he's hitting the root, and then he's hitting the 5th again. Sorry, if you're calling me right now from Chicago, I'll call you back, okay? All right, so let's look at it. Let's just look at that much. Chromatic, the weight of this line, it's got to go to A. It's not going anywhere else. That's that half step to the 5th. I'm sorry, to the 6th. And then that chromatic, like what he did in this first one, right? A on the 2nd bar, A, B flat, B natural, C sharp. He's doing that again here. It's the same kind of motion. So that's like a Ronism right here. Let's keep going. So here, to me, it's like he, right at this point, he hit an A chord, that A, and then the octave lower, and then he got back to D minor like immediately. So it's like he inserted a 5 chord right in front of that D going back to it, right? Let's try this out of time. I mean in time. 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Cool? it could very well be this is like expanded into a modal tune like So What or Impressions. So, all right, cool. I'm gonna head into the comment section now, see what we got to work with. So again, if you're still here, please feel free. Hey, Nick, you made it on time this time. Congratulations. Good to see you as always. Thanks for hanging with us. Okay, so, all right, let's see what we got. Casey Testing. Oh, it's an ominous name. Nice subject. Are you talking about the subject of the video? Talking about me? Are you talking about the content? No, I'm just kidding. I know what you mean. So, cool. All right, let's see what Nick has to say here. I've gotten a little better at it now, but I used to always get lost when walking over solos on modal songs, especially So What, where the chord changes goes up a half step. That's right, that bridge shifts a half step higher, and a lot of bass players, not just bass players, a lot of musicians flip the form of this tune. It's like the most flipped form of all time is So What, especially with younger musicians. And, you know, we're all trying to play music, but we got to keep the form. So one suggestion for that is to pay attention to the form, especially if you're the bass player. You cannot mess up the form and count on somebody else to tell you where it is. Okay, get used to that. Get used to that concept. I learned that the hard way multiple times. All right, and people mess up the forms. It's okay. You keep making music afterwards, but try not to. One of the ideas that I like to utilize is to really make a big deal out of the end of the form, and to make sure that everybody knows that we're here. So a lot of times I'll repeat a line at the end, or imply a turnaround, or imply something really specific at the end of the form to say, here is the top, right? That can really help, because getting the form flipped is super easy to do. Cool. Let's see. When it comes to the Dorian scale of E flat, it becomes unstable as soon as possible. When it comes to the Dorian scale of E flat, I'm not sure I understand specifically your comment, but when it comes to the E flat, it becomes as unstable as possible. I'm not sure exactly what you mean there, but yeah, totally. Talking, walking. All right, right on. It is tricky, right? It's not something we do very often, especially not now since we're all at home. Okay, let's see. Okay, Nick, sorry, it's a little unrelated to modal walking. Hey, we're just talking about bass, so it's all good, Nick. Is there a reason why you set the metronome on 4 as opposed to 2 and 4? Is it simply another tool in the belt? So the last statement there is the nail on the head. I a lot of times will just leave my metronome set where it's at and shift it maybe occasionally, or if I'm trying to specifically practice something. But if I've got the metronome set here, and there's another guided practice session where we talk about this, Nick, where of course you can call this beat 4. You could call this almost anything. I could call this, 5/4. I could call this 7/8. Call that beat 1. It's more just because I wanted to practice something a little slower and then bounce it up fast. So I'm directly, they're directly correlated. I could call this all 4 beats. Right? Is there a reason why if I'm calling it 2 and 4? 1, 2. Whoa, didn't hear it yet. I see sleep music for babies. Kind of said what I'm trying to say, and I hadn't done it. But yeah, it's said it really well. Oh, so this is why I got to read ahead a couple comments before really sitting on this. So Nick, yeah, I just switched to 2 and 4. Laugh out loud, exactly. But that's the idea. And sleep music for babies hits it right on the head. I think it helps with keeping everything in time without being too reliant on the metronome, and that is perfectly stated. I'm trying to get less information from the metronome to work on my internal time, or my own division of time, without being super reliant on the metronome. And there's certain apps. The one that I really like to use is called Time Guru, because it'll slowly take away clicks. It'll take away information. So especially if you're working on something really slow, like if it's on beat 4, every now and then you're not going to hear that beat 4, and you still want it to be lined up. Now, that being said, we don't always need metronomic time. You should practice all of this stuff without a metronome too. Okay? And make sure it feels good without a metronome, because guess what? When we're on, when we're recording, when we're on the stage, when we're playing with people at jam sessions, we're not playing with metronomes, right? We're not. So make sure you're practicing without a metronome too. It's, but that's just the thing. Accountability is the word, that's my word of the week. So long story, but I won't go into it. Same reason for practicing with the metronome on beat 1 of each 2-bar phrase, for example. And we did that, if you check back at one of our previous guided practice sessions, Sleep Music for Babies. I love that title too. It's really nice. It's like Brian Eno music for airports or something like that. Or, anyways, so we could call this beat 1 of every 2 bars, right? And that would be actually like a little bit more towards the Ron plug nickel, you know, playing on So What, that tempo. So of course, you need to shed at that too, right? But on the spot, that's what's up. So you could call it, you could call it beat 1 of every 2 bars. You could do almost anything. So yeah. Oh, we got some bass love here. It makes sense. Thanks, Sleep Music for Babies. Yep. Absolutely. I like all of this. Y'all are getting along. Okay. Here we go. Chris, what's up? Welcome back. Good to see you again. I know many who imply a 2-5 when walking on a modal tune. So for example, 1 measure of D minor 7 and 1 measure of G7 back to D and so on. Absolutely. It's another way to imply like the sound. Absolutely imply a 2-5. Another way to think of that too, perhaps, and especially if you're in like a minor key, is to imply a 2-5 of that minor key. Like thinking E, A. Another idea, but yeah, totally. Right, there's a bunch of different ways to do it, so I really like that. It never resolves to C major, provides the illusion of harmonic motion where there is none. Yeah, absolutely, Chris, I agree with that approach. And I've heard that, and I've utilized that too, for sure. If you think about like milestones, like the new milestones, there's a lot of that going on in the new milestones, right? I hear a lot of implied motion from a 2 to a 5 chord type of sound. And it's kind of just like, it's not arbitrary, but it's it's used tastefully, you know, that's the idea. But that's one song that comes to mind there. Excellent point, Chris, I love it. Cool, all right, so we've got some other stuff. Yeah, and so, okay, yep, we're talking the same thing, right? We're investigating this, I love it. Nick says, I've always thought implying a 2-5 in a modal song meant the 2-5 in the key of D minor as opposed to D being the 2. Yeah. So I'm thinking that it's both ways, and there's 2 examples of that. Do you know what I mean? So 4 is directly related to 1. Oh, like you mean G? It's all the same scale, honestly. I mean, if we're talking about a D minor and a G7, it's technically like that's the Dorian, that's the Mixolydian, that's Ionian. We're talking about all the same notes, but the key difference, and what I really tried to make a point of here today, is where to put in those chromatic notes that make a lot of sense. And what I was kind of referring to earlier is if, like, say for instance, okay, let's stay in this key and talk about D minor 7 to G7. If I was to play like the G7 bebop scale, I would put a half step between the root and the 7th, right? Like this. Right? And you can do that sound. Inside of this like modal, like that D minor, implying D minor. But, you know, like by the example that we checked out with Paul and Ron, you know, there's less of that happening. But particular tunes have that vibe for sure. So, but I don't hear that unless we're dead, like very specifically, sorry, my G string is like popping out of tune like crazy. Unless we're very specifically trying to hit that G7 chord. You know, it lines up in a slightly different way. But I'm feeling all this. This is great. Great content, guys. Thanks for helping me here. And 2-5 in D minor. Yep, absolutely. So we're on the same page, man. Implying those different harmonies. You really help open up the lines. Okay. Thanks, Nick. I really appreciate this comment. Impressive being able to point at the right measure and notes. By the way, I would break my brain. I've been practicing. That's all I'll say. I've just been here at home shedding. Right there. I can see. There's Nick. No, just kidding. So, thanks. I wonder if he's videoing and adding the visuals so he can see. I won't give it away. I won't give you away my secret. I'm adding the visuals and I'm able to see them. So that's what's yeah, C sharp does sound good because it's implying like the third of the 5 chord. Right. Okay, so I'm going to just bounce, 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 bounce. You can any version of the scale degrees 6 and 7. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And that's, you know, earlier on, that's what we were hitting too. B natural, B flat, C, C sharp. But for me, and I love this, man, sleep music for babies, we should talk more because I'm feeling all of this. It's how the line is being put together. I'm sure you agree. It's like where we're trying to get to, and that's what I was trying to do by implying this scale, where I'm just trying to like quantify what it is that makes sense about this. Using this ascending, using that B and then the C, C sharp, really puts my weight, my forward momentum towards D. Right? Whereas if I'm heading this way, and this is more of a personal taste to me, that way I'm heading towards the A, right? Which is, I want to use the chromatic leading in that direction. So, okay. So, okay, I really need to, you're mad late, Sonny. 40 minutes, thanks, Pat. Okay. That first Ron Carter line is a minor 6 diminished scale going up. Ooh, yeah, Dave. Hey, we were talking about that diminished stuff last week, right? Wouldn't it, you had some good comments on that last week as well. But yes, the implication of diminished 6, again, implying, and to me that's implying the 5 chord, which really, you know, this is not mine. This is, you know, of course, this has already been, all the groundwork's been laid on this, but understanding it and really trying to utilize it is super crucial. So, but yeah, I'm with you 100% on there. Yep, and we talked about Barry Harris. Yeah, big time last week. So, beautiful. Sleep music for babies. We gotta hang out. I love this. Yep, there you go. Rewind and start from the beginning. And yeah, of course, all of these videos are up on Open Studio's YouTube channel. You can always go back, check stuff out. You know, leave comments. I will see all of this stuff again. Yeah, and you can watch from the beginning, anything. Good point, Nick. Oh, which, I'm not sure which comment you're referring to specifically, Chris, but maybe I already addressed that. So, Patrick, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking it out. Always love seeing you here. Yeah, okay, this is interesting. And I'm gonna breeze through these last ones here, Andrew. I know you're chilling, but I'm moving along. Interesting how linear chambers examples are. Yes, very scalar, right? And how melodic Rons are. You can, yeah, have a lot of variety, and that's kind of what I wanted to emphasize here. There's just so many ways to do it, but yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Any version of the 3rd scale degree 2, F or F sharp. 3rd scale degree. Yeah, and so that's kind of what we were implying, right? Thinking about like how D minor 7 or the 2 is very similar to G7, right? And we went over that, I think, a little bit like when we were talking about like bebop scales and like implying like this kind of, how that is D minor 7. That kind of idea over D minor or G7. But, you know, and that's what I'm getting at, is that the walking, I don't hear as much of that. But I'm sure there is versions of it. Okay. I remember asking someone in Open Studio about this months ago, knowing how in-depth it was, and it was not well received. Taco, 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 taco. Sorry about that, bro. Here we are now. So, hey, if you've got any further questions, any further comments like that, come join our Facebook group. The Facebook group, there's a link down below, Building Blocks of Bass. Everybody is welcome, and we can further the conversation like what you're talking about here, there. And same here, Piano Man. Anyone know the album Bob was referring to earlier? I'm not going to go dig it up right now, but if you check out Tommy Flanagan, Ron Carter, Tony Williams. I know it's on Spotify, and I'm positive it's on, you know, it's probably up on YouTube. What does the cover look like? It's like bricks. It's like a brick wall or something like that. I've seen multiple covers of this. I'm not sure exactly the release. And it's called The Trio, Sleep Music for Babies. You're on it. Man, I like you. This is awesome, with Tommy Flanagan. Absolutely. Sleep music for babies got my back here. Any recommendations for Ron Carter recordings? And that's the recommendation. Ron is on that one. So, hey Bob, how do you practice walking in different degrees of outside playing? Usually by ear. So I don't really think too much about outside playing. To me, it's usually like how I'm relating to who I'm playing with. Playing outside, you know, a lot of times for me, that's like I'm trying to think of different chord changes, and especially ones that are in and out of the harmony, like half step higher, half step lower, really makes a lot of sense, you know, or moving in certain cycles. Like if I'm thinking, if I was in D minor, and if I started moving the progression up in major thirds, that would be really jarring, so that would sound really out really quick. So it just kind of depends on, like the situation. But maybe that's something we can dig into a little bit further down the road, Oscar. And any suggestions you have as well. It's a great idea, but initially. I mean, that's all tempo based, so, you know, how out do we want to talk about, you know? I'm not doing pedals, I'm not dropping like pedals and things like that, or like implying whole different, I'm not playing time no changes. So there's different degrees of that for me. I got to put this one up on the screen just because I like it. Bob's one of the best instructors, bar none, I've seen. Thanks, Piano Man. I appreciate that. Okay, I'm moving, Andrew. Just wait. All right, hey Bob, awesome tips. Thanks a lot. Something unrelated to today's lessons, but about the previous one, the diminished shenanigans. Oh, I guess we're still going here. Have you ever thought of the diminished dominant scale as Mixolydian with flat 9, sharp 9, sharp 11? Is it only me being weird? No way. We're all weird here. So it's definitely not only you, Joe. Promise you. Let's talk more about this in the Facebook group, okay? So have you ever thought about the diminished dominant scale? So like the flat 9. Mixolydian with flat 9, sharp 9. I think, yeah. I think we're on a, you know, I think I know what you're saying. Check out last week's guided practice session where we talk a little bit more about that, and maybe that's maybe that will maybe my opinions will come through on that, or my whatever, how I'm thinking about that. Okay, who do you look to when playing with others to make harmonic choices that move outside of the key center? Ooh, typically the soloist. I mean, that's a very situational concept right there, Mr. Zeider. If I'm playing duo with the sax player, I'm likely to go with the sax player, what I'm hearing, being directly referenced. And sometimes you can go the opposite way. You can say, okay, I'm going to go this direction. The sax player may be going this way, I may be going this way, and we're still working together, but the concept of not trying to follow each other can lead to some pretty out results too. Didn't think we were going to be talking about playing out today as much, but yeah, the pianist too. You know, it depends on how much. If the pianist is if like you're in a quartet, the sax player is soloing, the pianist is implying some different chord changes, and the sax player is going with the pianist chord changes or the outness there. I mean, I'm going with them. Do you know what I mean? And there's options too to stay inside, which would make that sound maybe more out. So, you know, I think it's relative. I don't think there's one answer to really give right there. So, yeah. All right, so gotta keep moving. Thanks, Max. Appreciate you being here. Thanks so much. Yes, bassist rule. All day sleep music for babies. Love it. Absolutely, just made bass lines make more sense. Sweet. That's one of the best compliments. That's awesome, because we're trying to make good bass lines, right? Last week we got a little bit more like out there as far as like playing stuff, and maybe in a solo. Really wanted to check out some real bass stuff today. Hey Fernando, you made it, man. What's up? Glad you made it. Good to see you here. Thanks so much. All right, I really got to bounce. I really appreciate all the comments, everybody tuning in. If you have anything further, please join me in the Facebook group. If you like kind of what we do here, go over to openstudiojazz.com. Check out my new course, The Building Blocks of Bass. All of a sudden, I just got really blurry. Help me buy a new camera. No, I'm just kidding. But thank you sincerely for joining me today. Please come back next Monday